everybody, welcome back to another video. My name is Heather and we're here to do my October monthly reading wrap up and November TBR. This was a pretty good reading month. I love spooky season reading. I definitely themed my books this month very much so based off of the season. It has really cooled down here in Idaho. But yeah, let's just jump right into it because I've got quite a few books to talk about and I don't want this video to be too long. But starting off the month strong, I read Good Girl Bad Blood. This is book 2 in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I gave this one 4 stars. I thought this was really good. I read it really quick. I really like Pip and Ravi. I think they're a very fun duo to be our main characters. There are a lot of really fun side characters. And I just think that it was very interesting to see some of the fallout from the case in book 1. If you don't know, basically she is a senior in high school and for her senior project she decides to go and solve an unsolved case in her town. And so this one kind of picks up from that book and you're seeing a lot of the fallout from that original case and the trials, stuff like that. So it was very interesting. I thought it was fun. She starts a podcast in this one, which was very interesting. But yeah, just a fun, good YA mystery. I will say these books swear a lot more than I would expect from a YA book, like the F word quite a few times, which just feels weird for YA. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I feel like you shouldn't have. I feel like YA should be similar to like PG-13, right? And so it feels weird for it to have that much swearing, but other than that, I do really enjoy these books. It was a good one. A great start to my month. Then the next book that I finished was The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Other Stories. I was about halfway through this. There should be a video up of me starting this, but I just kind of picked my way through over the last kind of 2 months of just reading a short story, and then I'd read another book and then I'd pick up another short story, and I kind of just picked at this book. But overall it was a fun one. Definitely some of the stories are better than others. Let me walk you through each of them. Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was interesting. It was fun to read the actual story of it, but it's just kind of anticlimactic if you already know the ending because it's so short. A Lodging for the Night was one of the weirdest ones. I just don't understand what the point of having that in there was. It was weird. You could just, I don't know, skip it. Suicide Club was one of the longer ones and it was interesting. Basically, these two people that like to go and do crazy stuff for fun stumble across this like suicide club where if you want to commit suicide but you don't want your family to have that on their like reputation, then you can they basically make all these things to like kill each other. And so then they set out to like disband the suicide club and like take it down. So that one was interesting. It was a little hard to follow, but it was good. It's kind of broken up into like 3 little stories within the one story, but it was fine. Thrawn Janet, I literally don't even remember that one at all, so no idea. The Body Snatcher was interesting. I thought it was going to be more like sci-fi craziness. No, it's just this doctor, like this guy who teaches medical classes and he needs bodies for them to examine, and so he basically is like having hired these thugs to go and like kill people on the street. It's weird. Markham, I also have absolutely no recollection of what that story is. So yeah, that's my rundown on these stories. It was an interesting one if you want some very Halloween themed, like classic short stories. It was fine. I think I gave the whole collection overall 3 stars. So nothing super special. Some were better than others, but worth picking up. And then the next book that I finished, I actually listened to the first half of this. Oh, it's really shiny. I listened to the first half of this on audiobook, but this is The End of Time. It is number 3 in the Books of Umber series. And this was technically a reread for me, but I didn't really remember a lot of it because I haven't read it since I was really, really young. But I gave this one 4.5 stars. I thought this was a very fun ending. It kind of brings a lot of stuff together. There's some fun twists, some surprise characters. And I will say, one thing that I love about reading middle grade fantasy is it does not follow the tropes, like at all. If you go into this thinking of it from more of a YA perspective, you are going to be very surprised, let down, depending on how much you want it to follow the tropes. There's definitely a few things where you have like a whole scene of him like confessing his love to this girl that he did not end up with at the end. It just is not your typical ending, and I really appreciate that. So if you feel like you are getting sick of just reading the same tropes over and over again in YA fantasy, maybe give middle grade fantasy a try, because I feel like they are not so set in the tropes like the YA genre has kind of become. Middle grade definitely has a lot more wild out there plots where you just don't really know where it's going, and I really appreciate that sometimes. Just be aware, like, it is written for kids. This is not like an adult book. This is not even YA. This is very much so in the middle grade thing. So yeah, but I think it's really fun. I like these stories a lot. I also really like the audiobook narrator if you want to listen to them. I find them very enjoyable. And then after that, I read Frankenstein. I was working through some of the Halloween classics that I've never read this month. So Frankenstein was an interesting one. I gave it 3.75. I feel like, I don't know what I was expecting this story to be, but this is not it. He basically makes his monster within the first like 50 pages max. And then you're just following this like crazy thing of this monster's like out to get him, and there's so many things where I think you're supposed to kind of sympathize with the monster, but I was just like, no. His logic is terrible. I do not feel bad for him. So I don't know, like, I think one of the points is supposed to be like, is Frankenstein the monster or is Frankenstein's monster the monster? But I'm just like, they're both terrible. Moving on. Like, I don't know. I had a lot of hard time really feeling sympathy for the Frankenstein monster. I had a lot more sympathy for Frankenstein himself. It just felt a little weird. So I don't know. Not my favorite classic I've ever read, but I'm glad that I read it and I can now check this off of my list. After Frankenstein, I was feeling a little bit slumpy, so I decided to pick up something that I knew I could just get through really quick. So I picked up a YA thriller. This is And Then There Were Four, another very shiny one. This one is basically these 5 kids get together and they have this near-death experience, and it basically comes down to that they think their parents might be trying to kill them. And then, as the title suggests, one of them actually does die, so then it really becomes this whole situation of them needing to figure out what is going on and who is trying to kill them. I picked this one up at like a library sale. I had very low expectations for it and I actually really enjoyed it. I thought this was a pretty solid YA mystery. I gave it 3.5 stars. It's not like my most favorite book ever. I feel like the more I've thought about it, the more I've been like, oh, actually that was really good. I will say it felt a little bit like, I don't know how to put this in a way that makes sense, but I felt like they kind of just threw a bunch of random things in there just to get, like, check all the boxes for diversity with how the characters were made, which it did get to a point where it was like, okay, these feel a little more nuanced. It feels a little less like we just were going for forced diversity in the book, but at the beginning it feels a little bit weird, like, I don't know, like they were just trying really hard to check every diversity box. So I don't know, that kind of put me off a little bit at the beginning, but like I said, I do think it got better as you got through the book. But just a thought. Also, I feel like there could be lots of trigger warnings necessary for this one, just about like bad traumatic relationships with parents. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on this book. It wasn't like the most amazing book I've ever read, but it was good if you want just like a quick classic YA mystery. Then I went back to my classics and I picked up Dracula. This one was also very much so not what I expected it to be. I, again, have no idea what I thought the story of Dracula was, but this wasn't exactly where I expected it to go. I will say I had a really good time with it for the first little bit. And then it basically just repeated the whole storyline and I started to get really frustrated of like, okay, the same things are happening and we're still not seeing the signs. Like, I don't know how to say it without like spoiling things, but basically the whole storyline repeated and there were these big key like signs that certain things were happening and people were just missing them every time, and it got really frustrating and I was just like, oh my gosh, all of these men are idiots. And it took so long to get to the point where we actually had some resolution, where we were actually doing something and not just having bad stuff happen to everybody, that it kind of got frustrating. I do love this cover. And I do think overall it was like a good book. There was a very interesting plot. Definitely way more of a plot than a lot of classics have. There's a genuine plot with like a classic arc and stuff like that. So if you're looking for a classic and you want to jump into reading classics but you're not sure where to start, this one I feel like could be a really good one to start with. And I gave this one 3.75. And then one of the few new releases that I was actually looking out for this year was Stay in the Light by A.M. Shine. This is the sequel to The Watchers, and tell me why I had no idea that there was going to be more books after this. I thought this was the end. I thought this was a duology and we were just gonna get like a little wrap up from after the fact, tie up some of the loose holes. No, we start a whole nother thing. It dives so in depth with Irish folklore, lots of stuff that I've never heard of. I feel like I needed to do a crash course on all of their folklore and who the different gods were and stuff like that before I read this book. It does explain it pretty well, but just a lot of stuff I'd never even heard of. I do love that side of this series that were based on folklore. It's really fun. There were some interesting new characters in this book, and overall it was really good. I will say lots of strong language in this series. They're Irish, so I don't what do you expect really, but could do without it. Other than that, it's really good. This definitely falls more into the horror genre than most books that I read, but I'm learning that maybe I do need to read more horror because I did really enjoy it. I just need to find some horror that is a little bit cleaner. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know, because I would love to dabble. And I gave this one 4 stars. I thought it was a good quick read. I read it in like a day or two. So yes, very good. I will be keeping my eye out for the next book. I have not seen any announcements or anything about when the next book is coming, which is kind of frustrating to me because this left on a big cliffhanger. Like, they get into the most dire circumstances they have been in this entire series and then it ends. And as someone who did not know there was going to be another book, really frustrated. And then the last book that I read this month, I actually finished on Halloween night, so the very last night of the month, but that is As Good as Dead, the 3rd and final book in the Good Girls Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. I gave this one 3.5 stars. I didn't love this one as much as the other 2 books in this series. I feel like a couple things went against it. She just has this whole storyline, the main character, of just really going into these super self-destructive, crazy, like just not doing well modes, and somehow manages to hide it so well from everybody that nobody even is like looking into it. And it just got a bit much to where I was just like, it lost the fun feel. I feel like the other 2 books had this fun little banter thing going on between her and Ravi, but she just is so messed up by this point, and she's just not getting the help that she needs, and it just got a little frustrating and annoying, and I lost some of the stuff that I really liked. The other thing I did not like about this book was how it ended. Maybe it's just me, but if I'm going to go through a whole series, and specifically series where just nothing quite goes right and it's just like a high stress situation, I want to actually see the happy ending play out. This was one of those books where like you can tell there was a happy ending and you like get the little hint at the end of like, yeah, things worked out. But you never get to see it. You never get to see them actually relax and just like have some normalcy for once. And I don't mind that if it's a standalone. Like if it's a 1 book and I just went through the 1 book, I'm fine with like a ending where it just kind of sets it up and you can kind of assume how it goes from there. And that's kind of how this ending was. But if it's a whole series that I've sat through with these characters, I want you to take the time and show me the good ending. I don't want to have to just infer that things worked out. So yeah, that's one of my biggest gripes about this book, is just how it ended. I want to see them get a little bit of relief. So specifically when it comes to series, that's how I feel. Standalones is one thing, like the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, that's one that does it, but it's a single standalone book, so it's fine. Those are all the books that I read in October, so now I'm going to quickly speed through my November TBR. I've got quite a few books. I am making a really good dent in my fall TBR so far. I have just a few books left that are on that fall TBR, so those are included in this. if I finish my November TBR, I'll also have finished all of them that were in my fall TBR, and I'm hoping I can start to get to some other books as well. But first up on my TBR, I've got a few books that I want to read for probably what's going to be my last Around the World in Books video for the year. And I'm going back to Southeast Asia because I have a book that I really want to read that's for that one, and I've been holding on to it all year. I got it for Christmas last year, and I've just been waiting to read it until I could find some other books from other countries to make that video with it. So I finally found them. I have all but one of them, so I'm probably going to start on that video, and I need to order the other one off Amazon. But the first one for that video is going to be The Happiness of Katie, not sure. And this is by, I have not looked up how to say their names yet. Jane Vejaviva? I don't know. I will look up how to say it before I do that video, but it's just this little nice tiny book. And I can't remember off the top of my head what country this is for, but this is probably going to be my next read. I'm kind of in the mood for something just simple, not so crazy after reading several mysteries, so this will be my kind of ease myself down off of my spooky season. And then the next one for that video is the one that I have been holding off on, and that is The Fisherman King by Katrina Maud Dodd. And this one just is beautiful. I finally found a fantasy book. I feel like it's really hard to find fantasy books for these Around the World in Book challenges. Just not a lot of people seem to write fantasy in some of these more obscure countries, so I was very excited to find this one. I actually got 2 books from this author, but this is the one I'm going to read for the video, and I'm thrilled. So don't know a ton about it, but I'm really excited. It is from Brunei, not sure how to say that either, but I will find that out. The next one I don't actually have yet, but it is called The Best I Could by Subhas Anandan, something like that, Anandan. He is a criminal lawyer in Singapore, and he basically talks about what it is to be a criminal defense lawyer and goes through some of his cases and stuff. So it's a nonfiction book, but I'm really excited about that one. I need to order it off Amazon so that I have it for when I go to film that video, but I think that one will be very fascinating and will help me get a little bit closer to my nonfiction goal for the year, which I've not been doing very good at. And then the last one for that video is The Sorrow of War by Bao Ninh. And this one is basically the story of a North Vietnamese soldier from the Vietnam War. So kind of getting the other side of the war that you don't get as often. So those are all of them for that video. And then the last 2 books on my fall TBR are the second 2 books in the Shadow and Bone series. So Season Storm and Ruin and Rising. I don't think I'm going to reread Shadow and Bone, even though it's been a long time since I read it. I think I'm just going to look up a bit of a plot summary and then dive into these 2. I really actually like Shadow and Bone. I know a lot of people say to just skip the trilogy and then read Six of Crows, but I just couldn't bring myself to do that, and I'm really glad I didn't because I thought Shadow and Bone was really good. So I am excited to finish it, and I think that these will be good as we go into some of the colder weather, maybe get some snow. They just feel like they fit for that season. And then the last book on my November TBR is City of Bones. This one is one of the books that I told myself I wanted to read this year. I got it for Christmas and I just keep putting it off. I don't know why. I think it's just because it's such a hyped up book that I just get nervous that I have too high of expectations for books like this. But hopefully it lives up to the hype. I know that a lot of people say that this is not maybe her best writing, and the newer books definitely get better. I've decided to read them in the order that she has on her website, so that's what I'm going with, and that starts with City of Bones. So this will be my jump into it, but it'll be a lot of fantasy, and that is just what I love. I feel like that's perfect for the cozy in cold months, is just getting into a lot of fantasy. So anyways, that's all of the books I'm hoping to read in November. Honestly, I could get 2 more. Oh wait, no, I have 1 more. I'm also currently listening to A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. I started this one as an audiobook while I've been doing a puzzle that I have. If you are watching my vlogs, that will be coming out. I'm a little behind on editing vlogs, so you'll see that eventually. But I do want to finish that one this month along with my puzzle, so I'll probably just listen to that audiobook and do my puzzle. But it's like a middle grade fantasy book, and actually it's been super fun so far. So that's everything that I plan to read in November. But yeah, if I can get to more, that'd be great, but those are for sure what I want to try and read this month. It is a lot of reading, so I will be very happy if I can get through it. But I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. It's been kind of long, even though I've tried to get through it as fast as I could, but thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any book recommendations or if you've read any of these books, and I will see you in the next one very soon. Bye.